Amazons. Tales of these warrior women have been told for generations, and for good reason. Ancient Greeks found their society baffling. Women as warriors, rejecting men? Absurd. Though to give them a little credit, some of them had a genuine fascination. An important fact for this video is that they, and the later Romans, were 100% certain that Amazons existed. Because of this, many historians of antiquity wrote about them in their chronicles, histories, geographies, and whatnot. There are a few modern theories as to who inspired the Amazons. However, today we'll be looking at some stories of Amazons from Greek and Roman historians. Seeing as they're not cohesive whatsoever, they'll be organized by author. As the story goes, the Greeks fought a battle and won at the Thermodon River against the Amazons, whom the Sarmatians call manslayers, which is just exactly what I was looking for in this research. Anyway, after this victory, the Greeks captured some of them and put them on their boats. Clearly they thought they were in control, but they now had nowhere to run, so the men were slaughtered to a man. However, Amazons had no idea how boats work, so they were carried by the wind to the mouth of the Don River. Without wasting time, they went inland and started raiding. The local Scythians had no idea what was going on, and justifiably retaliated. Thing is, they didn't realize they were women until they started killing some. Upon realizing the situation, they decided to stop killing the Amazons. You see, when they thought they were fighting men, they were defending their lands. But knowing what they know now, they started thinking long-term. The Scythians sent out a detachment of young men of roughly equal number to the Amazons to set up camp near them, and live as they did. If the Amazons attacked, they were ordered to retreat so as to not fight. Seeing the potential of the manslayers, the Scythians wanted to integrate them into their families. Thankfully, they went the rom-com route instead of the typical method of the time, by having the young Scythian men live alongside them and grow closer over time. It's kind of adorable if you ignore the breeding mentality of the Scythians. And the plan worked. The Amazons caught on quickly that the Scythian men weren't there to cause harm, and they started living not quite together, but next to each other. At some point, one person from each group got together and brought a friend each. This eventually cascaded into both groups coming together as one. How sweet. They couldn't speak to each other at first, and apparently the Amazons were much better at learning Scythian than the men were at Amazonian. Probably because Amazons got more use of Scythian, being, in Scythia, but I like to think that this is one of the first recorded instances of weaponized incompetence. After some time, the Scythian men wanted to bring the Amazons to their homes to wife them up properly. But the Amazons basically said, "I don't like the sound of staying home all day doing chores. I like hunting and fighting. That's what I'm good at. If you want us to continue being together, go home, pack your stuff, and move in with us, because we'd rather be dead than doing, quote, womanish tasks." The men agreed, did that, and then the Amazons realized that they had not only pillaged local towns, but also stolen the boys from their families. Remember that this whole thing started because the Scythians wanted to have Amazons within their families, not the other way around. So thinking that they made a few too many enemies out of their neighbors, altogether they went eastwards to where the Sarmatians live today. In Herodotus' day. And also that's why Sarmatians speak broken Scythian, apparently. Now wasn't that cute? Time to get to the wacky stuff. While the Amazons are clearly known to have lived near the Thermodon River, they actually come from Africa west of Egypt, a long time before even the Trojan War. There were a lot of fierce women who lived there, such as the Gorgons, which includes Medusa, who's their queen, because according to this historian, the Gorgons were an entire kingdom. He then goes on to describe how the Proto-Amazon society worked. Gender roles here were reversed when compared to the Greeks. Women were required to serve in the army and usually maintained their virginity during this period, while the men did the household chores and took care of the children. When girls were born, their breasts would be cut off because they got in the way during war. By the way, Amazon in ancient Greek means without breasts, so that's good to know. He then goes on to describe geography, which really doesn't make sense to me. This may be because so much has changed since the Bronze Age, but the Amazons also invaded Atlantis in this scenario, so take that as you will. The Amazons conquer Atlantis and then have wars with the Gorgons, which aren't concluded until Perseus kills Medusa, and then Heracles comes by and destroys both of their societies. Heracles did this in his pure benevolence to free mankind of societies dominated by women. I wish I was kidding. Then an earthquake happened which destroyed the Amazons' homeland, so they decided to move. The queen of the Amazons, whose name is Moreira and has been here the whole time, then signed a treaty with the pharaoh of Egypt, who is, now let me just take a look at my notes here, Horus. She then subjugated Syria, moved through Phrygia to the sea, and built cities along the way. She also settled islands, making sure to mention Lesbos, wink wink, and she also created a mystery religion on Samos. Then exiled Thracians and Scythians kicked them back to Libya. The end. That's something. This wasn't a very popular origin story of the Amazons, but it's nice to see that adding Atlantis to pseudo-history is a tradition that lasts over 2 millennia. The later Romans had different stories. Here I put Orosius and Justin together because their stories are basically the same. According to them, 2 members of the Scythian royal family were exiled by the nobility and brought with them a group which settled on the Thermodon River. After settling there, they began pillaging the surrounding settlements. I wonder why they got exiled. Anyway, the people who got attacked united and slaughtered the royals and their army, leaving behind exiled and widowed women who decided to take their fate into their own hands by taking revenge on the surrounding settlements and on the men who survived in order to create unity in widowhood. After the bloodlust subsided, they made up with the surrounding men and started having children with them. However, the Amazons would kill their boys and only raise their girls as warriors, burning off their right breasts in order to use their bows more easily. They then split themselves into 2, with 2 queens. One would guard the homeland, while the other would go out and conquer or pillage depending on what they felt like. Marpesia and Lampedo were the first. Lampedo seems to disappear as it's Marpesia's daughters that come to power as the future queens. Marpesia goes on to conquer swaths of territory, establishing cities along the way. But then the whole Amazon empire falls apart and Marpesia is brutally murdered. Orithyia is the queen that comes next. She had to deal with Hercules and the Athenians coming by and wiping them out, kidnapping many Amazons, which is how Theseus kidnaps Hippolyta. After the devastation, the Amazons would continue, but without the great empire. The later queen Penthesilea would pick the wrong side of the Trojan War, further worsening the situation. Justin adds a little tidbit about how one of the last Amazons tried to get knocked up by Alexander the Great, but she died soon after and the Amazons were no more. While the stories are similar, the way they are portrayed is very different. Justin opens by saying how it's difficult to know if Scythian men or women were the most distinguished among them since they were both very formidable. Meanwhile, Orosius was more like, "How could this happen? How horrible! The men of the age were such..." I briefly mentioned Jordanus' account of Amazons in my last video, so check that out if you want to know more. He pretty much copied Orosius, which he admits, except he makes some key changes. Instead of royal Scythians, they were Goths. The men weren't slaughtered, but just away on an expedition when neighboring tribes tried to kidnap them. Apparently they were taught how to fight by their husbands and fought back effectively. This victory hyped them up so much, they did the same 2-queen system with Lampedo and Marpesia and yada yada, you know the rest. One thing that's different is a specific tradition where the women would see men once a year to make children and give away the male ones. That is, if they didn't kill the male children, which they apparently did pretty often. Jordanus also makes sure to mention that the Amazons really despised pregnancy, as in they would look down upon other Amazons who were pregnant. It was very much a necessity which they suffered through. I don't have any analysis for all of this. This was just an interesting look at what Greeks and Romans considered actual Amazon history. If you want to learn actual Scythian history, consider picking up this book by the YouTuber and archaeologist from Dig It with Raven. They were kind enough to send me this copy for free, but that's only because I asked very nicely. This is a meticulously researched and very digestible book on the lives and cultures of people who you probably weren't taught a lot about. This includes Scythians and goes around the world to look at Minoans, the Xiongnu, and Proto-Inuit Thule. It's a great look at cultures I knew about tangentially, but also helped me discover new ones I had never heard of before. Links for it will be in the description below. With that said, I'll see you next time.